everybody here yet? We're ready? Well, good afternoon. I'm joined by School's Chancellor Dennis Walcott and Chief Academic Officer Shail Polakow-Suransky. Do you know how to spell it? No. Polakow hyphen Suransky, Suransky. That's not that hard. Even I could do that. I have trouble with Bloomberg.
You get promoted to the next grade.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Together we'll run through the high school graduation numbers for 2012 that the State Department of Education released today. Since 2005, when the state began reporting graduation rates, our public school students, as you know, have made tremendous progress. And since 2009, years in which they've been required to reach higher and higher standards in order to earn a diploma, our students have risen to the challenge. Our administration has wholeheartedly supported raising those standards, as you know, and that reflects the realities of the 21st century, where students need more skills to succeed economically. And today, more students are graduating better prepared for success than ever before. Now, if I can figure out how to use this, we'll go to the next slide. There we go. First slide. Is that the right one? First slide. The orange bars, which look yellow to me, on the left, represent the four-year graduation rates in public high schools from 2005 to 2012. Last year, despite the most rigorous graduation requirements in New York State history, which I'll describe in a moment, the four-year graduation rate for New York City public high schools essentially held steady at 64.7%. Yes, you can say it's flattened out, but remember, each year the standards have gone up. Higher percentage, you've got a score on each test, and more Regents tests have gone from 3, we'll see that in a minute, up to 5 Regents tests, and from 55% passing to 65. So that really is quite amazing. Everybody had predicted that our graduation rates would fall precipitously, and that did not happen. And a great deal of credit goes to our students, their teachers and principals, and their parents. It's compared to going back in 2005, we've increased at just just 10%, increase of just 10% in the rest of New York State over this period, and we've gone up from 46% to 65%. Think about what that means. Since our school reforms, since 2005, nearly 60,000 students graduated, 57,295 if you want to be exact, who would not have graduated if the graduation rate we had 8 years ago had remained constant. So you've got 60,000 more students graduating with an awful lot tougher standard. That really is quite amazing. Meanwhile, our dropout rate has, which you see on the right, has fallen dramatically, represented by the blue bars. And since 2005, we cut dropout rates by nearly half. Today, they're at an all-time low. And that is also wonderful. A kid drops out of school, the chances of them coming back are not great, and the chances of them ever getting the skill sets they need to share in the great American dream are minuscule. Since 2012, dropout rates were down 0.7% from the previous year, and they were down, incidentally, in all ethnic groups. Next slide. Since 2012, we continue to outperform large districts. The bottom blue line is Buffalo, Syracuse, Yonkers, and Rochester. We continue to outperform large districts in the rest of the state and better prepare our students for higher standards. Last year, the graduation rate at the next 4 big cities, represented by the blue line, declined by 2.8%. And in 2005, our graduation rate was essentially the same as these other large districts, but in 2012, it's 11 points higher. So since everybody takes the same tests and big cities have many of the same problems, I think that once again shows that our Department of Education, our teachers and principals are doing a great job. Now, this progress has been shared across the board. Graduation rates up for every ethnic group since 2005, and our Black and Latino students have led the way. Black students have seen I got to go to another slide here. Here you go. Black students have seen a 49% increase in graduation rates since 2005, from 40 to 60, and the percentage of Hispanic students graduating increased by 54%, from 37 to 57, and we've closed the achievement gap between black and white students by 23% since 2005, and the Hispanic-white gap has also closed by 23% over that period. So yes, they're behind, but they are making faster progress, and we've got to catch up. If we could keep that kind of progress going, they would catch up. For many, many years, as you know, we just threw up our hands in the city and said, oh, they can't learn, and that's just not true. They can learn like every other group. We've just got to make sure that we devote the resources to getting them the skills they need, and this is something that should put a smile on everybody's face. It gives us great hope for the future. Now, the next slide, this is the 4-, 5-, and 6-year graduation rate. As the dropout rate has fallen, more and more students are staying the course and putting in the work necessary to finish their studies. As you can see from this slide, the 5- and 6-year graduation rates continue to increase, represented by the blue and green bars. In 2012, 71% of our students graduated in 5 years compared to 70.4% in 11, and 23.2% graduated in 6 years compared to 70.9%. And I think we can be especially proud of these students. The press seldom writes about it, but these are students who have language barriers. They have to work to support their family. They have all sorts of problems, and yet they care enough about their future to keep staying in school. At one point, we criticize people for dropping out, and we don't give them credit for staying on. These, the kids on the right in those two groups, are the ones that we really should take our hats off, maybe to all of them, but those who have the courage to stick around and the understanding that their future is in their hands are those with the blue and the green bars, and our congratulations go out to all of them. Let me sort of contextualize this year's graduation rates, because it takes more to graduate than it ever has before. And so here is an example of the state raising the requirements for diploma every one of the past 4 years. In 2008, the students needed only 55% or higher on 5 regents. Last year, for the first time, students were required to pass 5 regents exam with a score of 65 or higher in order to graduate. And students are now required to be proficient in a wider variety of subjects, and especially in language arts. And that's a reason why one group did drop down, and that is the graduation requirements that were higher for English language learners. Their 4-year graduation declined by 4%. Oops, hang on, just hit the wrong button there. Their 4-year graduation rate declined by 4.5 points, although their 5- and 6-year graduation rates continue to decline. And this fall, we're taking extra steps to help those students and their teachers, which Dennis will describe in a minute. But if you just take a look, every year the standards got tougher. The number of tests they had to pass got tougher, got more, and the results are better. It really is quite impressive. This is graduation rates. Let me come to this one. Here you've seen, let me go back to this one for a second. You can see from the slide that as we've raised standards, the students are meeting them. Percentage of students earning Regents diplomas represented by the green bars. And if you look, this, I don't know if this doesn't work, on the right-hand side, this bar on the right-hand side is down to 3.2%. What this is these are non-regent local diplomas, and the only reason that exists now for special needs students. But everybody else virtually now has to pass the regents. And the fact that our graduation rate stayed the same as we raised the standards really is something that gives us great hope for the future. The percentage of students earning regents diplomas has increased 5.9% this year, more than doubled since 2005, and over the years culminating with 2012, we've effectively phased out all of the non-regent diplomas, and that's what you see on that 3.2% on the right. Now, let's just one more thing here. To get an idea of what these rising standards mean, consider how new requirements would have reflected in past years' graduation rates. In this graph, the orange line represented reported 4-year graduation rates from 2005 to 12. That's this line, and you can see it sort of flattens out there. But the gray line represents what those historic graduation rates would have been using the diploma requirements implemented last year. And what it says is in 2005, only 32% of the students that then graduated would have graduated by today's standards, and that's less than half of the percentage that reached that standard in 2012. So 46% graduated, but it would have been 31%. And you can see we've caught up with the higher standards. And so, you know, the future really is, if we can maintain this momentum, it can't be more encouraged. We keep raising the standards, and the kids keep doing better. The gray line represents, I think, the true trajectory of the students' progress, and it is, as you can see, certainly not flattening out at all. And lastly, asking more of our students has been a big part of our strategy for school improvement, but as you know, we've also demanded more of our schools and held them accountable for delivering results. We've closed something like 60 underperforming schools and replaced them with smaller schools that give more choices to parents and students, and I think the success of the strategy is stark in this bar graph. The orange bars represent the 02 graduation rates at schools we phased out between 04 and 011. The green bars represent 2012 graduation rates at new smaller schools we replaced them with in the same buildings. And at those campuses, the overall graduation rate increased from 37.9 at the large high schools in 02 to 67.7% in new schools in the same buildings in 2012. That translates to an increase of something more than 2,000 graduates per year, and in some of those schools, the graduation rate has more than doubled. So any ways you look at the last 10 years, our students have made tremendous gains, and they're making them despite every effort by special interests like the United Federation of Teachers to block our reforms at every step of the road. They have opposed to closing failing schools, even with the benefits to our students as clear as day. If the union had their way, we wouldn't have replaced those schools. Thousands of fewer students would have graduated over the past few years. And we proposed transforming and reopening another 24 schools in 011 through the turnaround process would have helped even more students graduate. What a disgrace. Those students have suffered and they'll probably never catch up. And it was all because the unions blocked taking the orange lines up to the green lines. That step was blocked, if you remember, in part by the union, and graduation rates of those schools were down 2.8% in 2012. Just think, as far as we've come, think about how much more progress we'd be able to make if these reforms that we proposed hadn't been opposed at every turn by union leadership. It's hard to understand why anybody would, given the results, would just consciously go out and have the nerve to say, I want to hurt our kids. And that's the only explanation you can possibly have for not participating in this process. Last year, in the State of the City address, we proposed opening more charter schools to add more options to the most effective school choice program in the nation. We proposed helping teachers pay off their student loans, and we proposed rewarding the best teachers by making sure hard work and good results were reflected in their paychecks. And every one of those measures would have increased students' chances of success, and every one was blocked by the teachers' union. We also proposed a rigorous teacher evaluation system would have helped teachers and students improve, and the union once again put their own interests above our students and fought a real meaningful evaluation system every step of the way. On June 1st, thankfully, the state imposed an evaluation system that is largely in line with what we proposed, and that's a huge victory for our students and another big step forward for our schools. The bottom line is our schools are in better shape than they've ever been, and we'll continue to work to improve our schools with every remaining day we have in City Hall. Let me now turn the floor over to Schools Chancellor Dennis Walcott. Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. You're bigger. We're comparing.
I know.
He's so much of a backwards guy.
I know. I'm not au courant. I haven't kept up with you, so I'll try hard. That's Avis, trying harder. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your leadership, and let me just say thank you to you and our entire team for their hard work. Our schools and students are the better off today than they were 12 years ago, and that's in large part as a result of the reforms implemented by this administration. As we approach the end of the school year, first I want to say congratulations to all of our graduates who will be graduating soon, and thank you to the teachers and the administrators and the faculty and, of course, our parents and our students who worked hard to be successful this school year. Since 2009 and every year since, our students have been required to reach a higher bar. And every year they have risen to the challenge. The 2012 graduating class, last year's class, was the first, as the mayor indicated, that was required by the state to pass all 5 regions with a score of 65 or higher to graduate. Yet, even with this higher standard, our graduation rate held virtually even with last year's historic high and has increased by 39% since 2005. So what our students have accomplished is really remarkable. All across the city, our students are rising to the higher standards with incredible work being done in our schools, especially around the new Common Core learning standards. These standards require students to think critically, to solve real-world problems, all the skills that prepare them for college and 21st century careers. Regent exams for math will start to reflect these tougher standards next year, and once again, we expect our students to meet that particular standard. But I know they can clear this new bar as they've done so many times in the past with the tremendous hard work of all of our staff. Now I want to turn back to the graduation results and talk a little bit more about our dropout rate, our 5- and 6-year graduation rates, especially for our Black and Hispanic students. So if you take a look here, you will see, as Amir indicated, when we talked about the graduation rates, and now if you take a look at 6-year graduation rates have dramatically increased for our Black and Hispanic students as more students stay in school. And I just want to take a moment to really accentuate what the mayor talked about. To me, one of the key numbers that we're talking about today is the continued decline in our dropout rate. We are at a historic low for our dropout rate, 11.7%. An amazing figure that back in 2005 was roughly 22%. Our dropout rate has plummeted, and more students than ever before are persisting in high school beyond the 4th year and are graduating in 5 and 6 years. And you take a look at the numbers here. For our Black and Hispanic students, you will see that gain as well. You see here with our Asian students, 13%. With our Black students, 32%, Hispanic students, 33%, and white students at 15%. An amazing figure. And that's as a result of putting our practice in place with new types of schools. And 5- and 6-year graduation rates for Black and Hispanic students have increased more than 30%, and the dropout rate for these students have been cut nearly in half since 2005. This is a testament to their perseverance, their resiliency, and critical skills as they move on to college and careers. It's also a testament to the reforms that we have put in place. Students are staying in school and finishing high school, and this is part due to the hundreds of new school choices we have created under the mayor. By this fall, we will have opened up 656 new schools. We will have a number out this coming September of over 1,800 new public schools or existing public schools in the system that never existed before, and as a result of the mayor's leadership. These new options include small schools, single-sex schools, transfer schools, charter schools, career technical education schools, just to name a few. Today, more students go to high-quality schools where teachers know each student well and support all the students on their path towards success in colleges and careers. From some students, achieving higher standards takes more time, as the mayor indicated, and I am proud that more students than ever before are staying in school and graduating after 5 or 6 years. Our next slide will have the graduation rates for our English language learners. And as the mayor indicated in his remarks, some of those numbers have gone down. And you take a look here, you will see English language learners, our Ls, as we call them, from 45.1 down to 40.5. But if you take a look at the numbers for those who were Ls who are no longer Ls, you will see those numbers even outpace our citywide rate as well. And that's an amazing statistic. So we will put some new programs in place to address that. As you can see with this slide, while the 4-year graduation rate of students who are Ls in their final years of high school declined this year, the 5-year graduation rate increased 1.1 points, and our 6-year rate increased by 1.5 points. So here's the 5-year rate, and there's the 6-year rate. Our Ls are remaining in school and working to meet the challenge that is posed by the higher standards, and they are eventually graduating. Our Ls have more challenges in meeting these high standards, in particular passing literacy-heavy regents. In fact, the performance of students who were previously Ls provides a more complete picture of success, and we're able to have the students entering our system as Ls. Our English language learner students make huge gains in the vast majority of the students who enter a city school as an English language learner do not stay English language learners, and they go on to do very well, as shown here, as I indicated to you before. On average, our students who enter the system as Ls become English proficient in less than 3 years. 33% of the students in the class of 2012 were Ls at some point during their time in a New York City public school, and only 12% of the class of 2012 were Ls by their 4th year of high school. As you can see, the graduation rate of our students who were English language learners any time after the 10th grade and are no longer Ls is 79%, well above the citywide average. Again, take a look over there. You see 78.9, rounded to 79%. Since we know our current English language learners are having some challenges meeting these higher standards, the Department of Education will be allocating additional funding and supports to the schools with the higher populations of English language learners. First, we're investing in the 25 schools that need the most support with additional training for teachers on best practices for L instruction and new support for principals by pairing each of these schools with a successful school that has done strong work with its English language learner population. We are also expanding funding to meet the needs of Ls by offering more than $2 million in new grants to high schools so they can offer extended day options, online courses, expand bilingual programs, and buy additional instructional materials. In addition, we will expand our investment in teacher quality by partnering with local universities to train more teachers with the expertise in bilingual education. It is critical that we support these students in graduating and becoming English proficient. We know that our English language learner students can go on to great success in high school and beyond, and you see that with the chart of the former Ls as well. Let me move on to our next chart. This slide shows that in the last year, both the state's aspirational performance measure, the APM as it's called, and the city's, New York City's college readiness index have increased. 44% of the class of 2012 graduates and 29% of the students in the cohort itself who entered high school in 2008 were college ready, based on a measure that aligns to the CUNY's remediation standards. This represents a dramatic 79% gain since 2005, a 79% gain since 2005. The state's aspirational performance measure shows that 34% of 4-year graduates in the class of 2012 are college ready, a 6% increase from last year. More students are graduating ready for college and 21st century careers, but we know that we have more work to do, and that's what drives us with our work. One other final point before I turn it back over to the mayor. When we were talking about college and career readiness, that term never existed before this administration introduced it, because we realized high school degree is not enough. We have to make sure that we're preparing our students for college and careers, and that's why we have this index, as well as the state having their index as well. Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for your leadership, for everything that you've done. Now I turn the podium back to you, sir.
Dennis, thank you. A brilliant job, I will say. All kidding aside, it is really amazing. Thank you.
Want to go back.
Let me summarize today's announcement for our Spanish-speaking New Yorkers, and then we'll take some questions. La tasa de graduación ha incrementado por 39% desde el 2005. Gracias a nuestras reformas escolares, casi 60,000 más estudiantes se han graduado desde el 2005 que si esta tasa hubiera quedado igual. And with that, we'll be happy to take questions.